I'm very happy to announce our seminar called Shifting Narratives Using Social Media and Campaigning for Change. With their incredible participants, we have Valeriia Voshchevska from United 24 Media. We have Alexej Hock, an investigative reporter at Corrective. And the seminar is moderated by Kateryna Rietz-Rakul, the head of the representative office of the Ukrainian Institute in Germany. Please, very warm welcome to the stage. The floor is yours.
I'm, first of all, thrilled to be a part of this conference with my institution, because fact-based narration, fact-based work, and therefore fight of disinformation are the pillars of our work. And of course, we are happy to see that we are not alone in this fight, because as we know, there is much more money and much more resources in disinformation. And today I would like to present you. I will not speak a lot, I will just say one thing. I will show you this, and this is a Russian cultural diplomacy in Germany study conducted by the Ukrainian Institute. It's already available online in English. Soon it will be available in German, because I think in Germany it's more than needed. And so this is conducted by our analytical department in Kyiv, together with some independent specialists. And it shows the network of state Russian and non-state Russian organizations who do cultural diplomacy, which looks more like Russian propaganda in Germany. And here you can find, lying around, you can find two flyers. One is, so we have a lot of courses also. And one of them is Crimea History and People. You can find a QR code, there's a course online, or there's a QR code exactly on this study. That's it about us. And now to our amazing speakers. First of all, you will hear more about the general picture and about trends from Valeriia Voshchevska. She is an international multilingual strategist for social media. She worked for Amnesty International, which is, I found, one of the most impressive jobs you did, actually. And now she's working in London for a Ukrainian organization. And then we will talk to Alexej Hock about one case study from Corrective. Alexej is an investigative journalist. He used to work for Die Welt. He got a Grimm Award for his project Straßengezwitscher, right? And he will tell us about the case he worked on with a team from Corrective, about which concerns exactly Russian disinformation. So, Val, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having me. And this is actually the coolest disinformation conference I think I've been to. When you walk in, you're like, am I at a rave or a disinformation conference? So it's really great. But I hope it will be enough to show some of the things that I'll be talking about today. There was a question at the previous panel about how do we counter disinformation with narratives that are truthful and that are based on values. And this is a little bit what I'm going to be talking about, because for me, countering disinformation with truthful narratives is what campaigning is. And that is what I've been doing for the past 10 years with different organizations in different places, and right now specifically to help Ukraine, which is the country that I was born in and that I do things for now. But I wanted to actually start by taking you through a little bit about the way that social media has developed and the way that social media has changed over the years. So when I started working in social media, it was 2014, and it was immediately after the Revolution of Dignity in Ukraine. This was the era in which social media was mobilizing people all across the world for different causes, and there was a lot of optimism about the role that social media would play in actually making our world a better place. And I still have this book on my shelf. I apologize that the title is in Russian. This was from a long time ago, but it's 700 pages of Facebook posts from the Revolution of Dignity in Ukraine in 2014 that showed just how important Facebook was in helping people connect, unite, and then eventually lead to a better world, for a better country for us. And essentially, it was back then that I decided that social media was something that I wanted to do professionally, but also specifically focused on campaigning. And it wasn't just Ukraine. I started working in the media. I worked for Newsweek and then for Amnesty International, but there was a lot of movements worldwide that were fostered through social media, from the Me Too movement that kicked off online as well, Niuna Menos, to bring back our girls in Nigeria. There were so many movements that were fostered through social media, and through, it was back then, it was new, but there was still a lot of optimism about what it could do for us. And so, sorry, I don't know, maybe I'm pointing at the wrong place. But the problem is that whilst we were optimistic about social media, and whilst we were playing by the rules, trying to understand it, trying to understand what worked, what didn't, what people wanted from us, what people didn't want from us, there was a lot of bad actors that saw social media as an opportunity for them to keep promoting their own harmful narratives. And this was really the rise of the sort of age of disinformation, which came with people like, not people, but organizations like Cambridge Analytica and these guys. That was really the age that, if you remember, this is when Trump got elected, Bolsonaro became the leader of Brazil, Alex Jones was a massive name on the internet. India was completely changed by the rise of Modi. And what we saw time and time again was that whilst sort of the people who cared about human rights and who cared about democracy and freedom and were optimistic about social media, were trying to understand it, understand how it could work better for us, understand how we could, you know, play a role in the discussions that people had, but these guys were actually using it to their advantage, and using it to their advantage by spreading openly fake and openly harmful narratives, and that were then going to have a major impact on our world. And I know that we're going to say this, the definition of disinformation, you'll hear it maybe, 300 million times over the course of, this conference specifically. We've heard it, but I just wanted to specifically bring to your attention that it is the intentional spreading of harmful and fake narratives about opponents for political or economic gain that we can define as disinformation. There's, of course, misinformation, which is spreading not truthful narratives because you are unaware, but disinformation is the malignant intent, which is what defined the role of all of those authoritarian leaders and still does today. After that came COVID, of course. COVID in 2021 really shifted the way that we all operated and the way that people use the internet. It was for the first time that more than half of the world population, 59% of people, started using the internet, which was, over 4.66 billion people's hearts and minds that we were able to reach. And again, to repeat, whilst we were trying to do this truthfully, honestly, others were taking full advantage of that. And for example, we, as the sort of civil society, we were a little bit more hesitant to try new platforms, more hesitant to try new things, but those who were trying to oppose us, the authoritarians, the conspiracy theorists, were fully embracing this new change in the way that people operated, because our lives became much more online than they ever were before. And this number of people keeps growing every single day. Today, January 2024, so this is even higher now, there's 66% of the world population that has access to the internet, which is 5.3 billion people who read and consume information all the time and then make their own decisions and their own actions based on that. But after COVID, I saw myself, and we all saw that these disinformation narratives could actually lead to a full-scale war. which is what happened in Ukraine. We saw how disinformation translated into tanks and bullets and missiles that were flying towards peaceful Ukrainian cities in 2022. And we were actually seeing how these misinformation and disinformation narratives were actually directly disseminated through the speeches of authoritarian leaders like Putin, but they were also seeping through into the mainstream through these lies being repeated by people, which is also the definition of misinformation, who were consuming content not from people who had lived experiences of what was going on. So one of the big things that after 2022 I spent a lot of my time on was elevating Ukrainian voices and the experiences of Ukrainians, because when we talk about campaigning against disinformation, that is actually one of the most powerful tools, is speaking directly and trusting directly those with lived experiences of any given situation. And so the next step was Twitter was in 2022 was bought by a certain individual that we all know called Elon Musk, and it completely changed the game for, I think, a lot of us here, for campaigners, for journalists, for activists, and it went from being a tool for mobilization and news and information to a political project of a extremely rich man, and we've recently seen the consequences of that with the recent election in the US. And this actually was a really big problem for everyone, and specifically for disinformation. Thank you for helping me. I don't know, I'm still pointing at the wrong thing. I don't know, many of you probably use this tool. It used to be a free tool on Twitter, but Elon Musk made it a paid tool. It's called TweetDeck. I used to check this every single day at work. I would start my day by opening it and checking it, and essentially it gives you an opportunity to see the top post on given keywords. So my TweetDeck is set up so I can see top posts on X that include Russia or Ukraine or Putin or Zelensky. And it just shows you, if you just stop for a second and look at the top posts, just how wide disinformation has been spread through this particular platform. It was obviously a platform, and always has been a platform, where a lot of journalists hang out, where a lot of public leaders hang out. And so it just showed you how deeply this disinformation was being spread through a lot of voices that previously were not as heard, because obviously verification became a thing that you could buy, and this is one of the most clear examples of how that has had an impact. These networks that were created, and Elon Musk essentially allowed for these disinformation networks to become stronger and stronger. So if you look on the right, 6.8 thousand retweets. This was in September that I made this screenshot, but this was before the election, and you could see that the top post on Russia or Ukraine or Zelensky or Putin was, what if Putin isn't the bad guy? What if Zelensky is? And then you can see the next one, Alex Jones, keep promoting the same old narratives that we've heard Putin say himself, other people close to Putin say himself. But we can see now how essentially X became the tool for these networks to share and also get other people to amplify these messages. And this was a very, very scary moment for many of us. We saw it happen, and essentially, this is just from official German government website, where you can see some of these very, the problem with disinformation is that sometimes it's not very original in the narratives that it spreads. You can see those narratives repeated on and on and on and on. And there's even, as I said, on the German government's website, this fact sheet essentially with the narratives that are most prevalent around Ukraine and the sort of the fact-checking of these narratives. So this is something that it's not just Ukraine narratives that get influenced through essentially these platforms. It's not just narratives about Ukraine either. Disinformation actually goes deeper and has an impact on societies like the one in Germany, like in the UK where I live. And this was actually one of the cases that really rang the alarm bells for me, because as you remember, this summer there were racist riots across the UK after a stabbing at a dance class of young kids. And it was proven to show that the disinformation that led to these riots was started by an account that was set up in 2013, which was a Russian account that used to post race car videos from a Russian city, and then it posted a tweet, posted a thing saying that it was actually a Muslim person who stabbed the kids, which it wasn't, and this massive network started amplifying these blatant misinformation. But it was just, again, this is just to ring your alarm bells in terms of the fact that it's not just Ukraine that's being impacted, it's societies in Europe and across the world as well. And one of the things I like to always bring up is that the first time that Meta banned Russia Today was in September 17th, 2024. Just for all of us to be aware of the fact that social media companies also had a big responsibility in the helping spread propaganda and disinformation. I can't believe that it took 10 years of war and 3 years of full-scale war for Meta to ban the biggest propaganda channel we have, spreading disinformation blatantly and provenly. So what do we do? This was the whole point of our talk, so I'll do this really quickly because I know we're a little bit out of time. It's really important to pay attention to these 3 steps. The first step is to understand why people use social media and be better at responding to their needs. The previous speaker spoke a little bit about this because that is also how algorithms work, and I'll show you a little bit more about that. The second point is that we need to understand what social media platforms people use. These change all the time. 10 years ago, it was not TikTok. 10 years ago, it was Facebook and others. Today, the landscape changes so quickly that as civil society, we need to be much better at understanding that and not leaving people alone on those platforms. Sometimes we're very hesitant. For example, at Amnesty, we had massive discussions. Should we even be on TikTok? You know, what is our responsibility if we do join TikTok? We can't leave audiences on their own with our opponents. It's just my personal opinion, but also, I think, a proven fact. And then finally, we need to make our own narrative stronger and more robust. And I will show you a little recipe based on hoe-based comms that we can basically use for that. We're competing for people's attention with loads of brands, with loads of other organizations, but we're also competing with those who spread harmful narratives and those who spread propaganda. My favorite stat, and this statistic is from, I think, 6 years ago from Facebook, but on average, a person scrolls through the same amount of content in one day as the height of the Statue of Liberty. So you can imagine, if we are going to be trying to compete against disinformation and harmful narratives, how much we need to put our effort and time into actually making content that makes people stop. And this is a little bit about also why understanding algorithms is important. So the first part of what we need to do is we need to understand why people use social media better. This is a really good tool that you can, I think they do quarterly updates, so you can actually see, and there's a breakdown by country, there's a breakdown by platform. You can really drill down into all of this really specifically. But this is a screenshot from 2024. It's called Data Reportal, that's done in partnership with We Are Social and Meltwater. And this is from 2024, and the main reasons for people to use social media is actually keeping in touch with friends and family, filling their spare time, reading news stories, and then also finding content and seeing what's being talked about. So the conclusion, again, from the previous speaker, as you saw, all of these disinformation channels, they produce entertainment content and then sometimes inject essentially disinfo. Why do they do it? Because they understand how people consume social media. And I'm not saying that we need to spread disinformation in response. I'm just saying that we need to be better and more aware about why people use social media and how we can be relevant to what they need. So I think we should all be checking this all the time and adapting our content strategies to this all the time as well. And also the second part, which was we need to understand which platforms people use, and that is also how we should spend our time and effort. We also need to really be aware that different platforms get used in different parts of the world differently for different things. Facebook is actually still the top platform with the top amount of users. There's 3 billion users that use Facebook. YouTube is number 2 with 2.53 billion users. Instagram, WhatsApp, TikTok. As I said again, these things change. These things from one year to another. You know, Twitter was, I think it was more used before, now it's less used. So we need to be also aware of the changes in people's consumption of social media. And my big call to everyone is, once you've decided which audiences you're really targeting and understand which channels they're on, don't leave them on those channels on their own with those who oppose us and spread disinformation, like with TikTok and with other accounts. Try to also be able to do that, be there and produce content. And it's really important for us to all join conversations and add value to people's lives. So not just project our own narratives, but actually comment sometimes based on our values, based on our knowledge, based on our unique perspective into ongoing conversations. My favorite post is one we did at Amnesty. This might sound for some of you a little bit, crazy, stupid, whatever, but it was one of our top posts on the right when it was finale of Game of Thrones and everyone was talking, sorry for the spoiler if you haven't seen it yet, it's been 6 years, but it was basically everyone was talking about how horrific the ending was and how disappointing it was. So we essentially used that conversation to insert something important into the discussion. And we did this post that said, you don't need dragons to destroy a city, talking about Syria, about Raqqa, just to basically show you how you can both understand what people need, which is entertainment, understand which platforms people are on. At that point, it was Instagram, and also insert yourself into conversations to be able to spread the narratives that are truthful and are based on values. And then finally, I actually won't spend too much time on it. And I see Marina in the audience, and we do a lot of this work on hope-based communication. But for us, it's extremely important as those who do truthful work to make our own narrative stronger and more robust. And this is actually based on psychology, the next slide that I will show you, because sometimes when we deal with a lot of negative, horrific images, disinformation, we try to respond in a similar way, which essentially sometimes speaks to the downstairs survival brain of a human being. When you keep sort of being negative, showing what we're against, talking about problems, the human brain has this tendency to shut down. Whereas we need to be better at communicating with people's analytical upstairs brain by having stronger and more robust narratives ourselves. And if you go on the next slide, this is how we do it. It's super simple. It's not, I know that sometimes people ask me questions about this, but this is just a really simple way to try and reframe and speak to the upstairs brains of individuals online, which is try to speak more about hope, try to bring people solutions, try to talk about what we're for, try to give people opportunities, and try to, instead of talking about people as victims, talk about people as human beings. And then if you go on the next one, people are chameleons. We imitate what we see. And so if we show people examples of the values that we represent and how we achieve the values that we represent, people tend to imitate that. So that is our big responsibilities, to not only just respond to disinformation, but also build our own strong and robust narratives. So I have more, but I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want you, if you have questions, I'm sure you do, to Val, please hold that thought, because now we will listen to the case study of Alexej, who will tell us how their research has halted Russian disinformation campaign, and then we will give the floor to the public, and we can have a talk, so you can ask questions to both of the speakers.
Yeah, let's do a deep dive into a case study. And we at Corrective, over the summer we were looking at a quite sophisticated disinformation campaign originating from Russia, which was called Doppelgänger, and which is going on. It started a few months after the full-scale invasion. Yeah, let me first, because not every one of you knows what Doppelgänger is, just tell a few words about what it is. And it's a quite sophisticated campaign. It's technically quite sophisticated. I will explain later why. And it's, as most of Russian campaigns, it's aimed to undermine support for Ukraine in the West. So it's targeting Western countries, Germany, France, Poland, US, Israel as well. And it's it has many faces. So on the one hand, we have like own disinformation websites like one of the core website is called RRN, Recent Reliable News. And then on the other hand, there are like websites impersonating Western media, such as Spiegel, Washington Post, etc. And it's just exact copies of the websites, the domain. So the website has another ending, so it's not Spiegel.de, it's Spiegel Limited, for example. But it looks exactly the same, and there is placed Russian disinformation. And yes, plus there are bots, of course, spreading this content on social media, X and Facebook. And actually there is a discussion about should we. So how effective is this campaign? It's really hard to measure because we don't know the statistic of the website itself for the most of it. So there is a discussion going on. I will tell a few words later about it. One interesting thing is that this whole campaign and the core website, RN, and the companies behind it, they are sanctioned by US and European Union already for more than a year, but it's still going on. And so this was the initial question for us. Why is it so? Just a few images. So we have here, for example, the RRN, the main website, and another website, and there are dozens of them. But on the other hand, these fake websites. So this is a Spiegel clone, and this is also where the name comes from, Doppelgänger, because it's like this is a core element of this campaign. And plus, of course, these bots which are spreading the content. So the question for us was, if it's sanctioned for more than a year, or at that time when we started this investigation, it was in May this year, so almost a year. So why is it still going on? How can that be? And we searched for new approach how to investigate this campaign, and we've seen that many efforts also from governments were undertaken to like analyze this campaign, to analyze narratives, to try to anticipate. For example, in the German Foreign Ministry, there was a whole unit looking at Doppelgänger and trying to anticipate the narratives and set their own narratives to counter the Doppelgänger narratives. On the other hand, researchers from NGOs, but also governmental institutions, they have looked at how this campaign works on the technical side, but no one has systematically looked who is offering these services for this campaign. This was like the starting point for our investigations, and this was our first published article in May, and so we looked first at the main website, RRN. And we identified, here are some a timeline. So here we have the website, which is has many like there are many. Here's the English version, but it's available in like 10 languages and all automated translation. And so in when was it? In June 2023, the French authority Vitsche made a big report about this campaign, and just because it was also targeting mainly France, and so the whole technique of Doppelgänger was described, and a month later it was sanctioned by the EU, and so it was identified that two PR companies from Moscow are responsible mainly for running this whole thing. And so we looked at the company, and it was a big surprise. So here we have a website which just shows you like who is hosting this website and doing some technical, providing technical services. And it was a big surprise to see that in that time, in May 2024, still this website was hosted in the Netherlands. You see it on the right bottom, by Stark Industries, so in the middle of the EU. So this was the question for us: how can that be? And we just looked for that company, and we identified the hosting company which stands behind it. So it's called PQ Hosting from Moldova. It's two brothers from Transnistria who running this hosting services, and it's a notorious web hosting services which can be called bulletproof hosting. So this characterizes web hosting services who just don't care really what's happening on their services. So they're getting money from also criminal activities, but also in this case political activities. And yeah, we identified that. So PQ Hosting has a drop mail company in the UK just to operate better in the Western countries, which is called Stark Industries, and they are it's in this web hosting business. It's very common that you have like just a cascade of companies, and they were located in a data center, and a bigger one, to get access to the big internet, which is located in the Netherlands. This is Severius Data Center, and they are a client of Mir Hosting. So a lot of names, but the most interesting thing is that Mir Hosting is a company which was already in 2008 it was reported that they were hosting like Russian cyber tech infrastructure for attacking Georgia just before or around the invasion there in 2008. So we confronted them, of course, and they said that they would take this website off, of course, and so it had a little effect, but not real effect. So they moved from Stark Industry just to another company, and it's still running. So our first approach was not really successful. But what we revealed in that article back then is that at Stark Industries also there's a lot more political stuff happening, such as DDoS attacks against Germany, but also other Western countries, which is happening. DDoS is, for those who don't know, it's just an attack on IT infrastructure. It's not really harmful. Is just your IT infrastructure is just for some days it's just not working. You have to fix it, and it's annoying. And but this is going on all the time, and partly it's going through servers of Stark Industries. So we took a new approach. We teamed up with Curium, which is a Swedish NGO, which does IT forensics, and we learned that they started to dismantle the whole chain of how Doppelgänger is spreading its content, and we found it very interesting. And this is, I said in the beginning, it's a quite sophisticated campaign, and I will show you now why it is so. Because the whole campaign consists of like the content is spreading through bots in X and Facebook, and there are links in it. And if you click on that link, you will be redirected through different stages until you finally arrive at the destination page. And it's mainly 4 stages. So we have to wait so here, the first stage, we have the bot, and there is a link which looks very strange. So if you click on it, you can see in the top the links are changing, and at the end you'll be redirected to this fake Washington Post website where a fake article about Zelensky has been published. And so all these stages, there is some technical infrastructure behind it. There are companies, real companies, which are offering these services, either hosting a website or registering the domain itself, or offering the software which handles the traffic, which means just makes sure that only those who are the target are landing on the disinformation page. yeah, if you are interested in the technical details, Curium, the link is hidden, but you can go to the Curium website. It's very interesting to see for those who are more deeper in the technical stuff. What we did is, one other interesting aspect. This technique, how they are like hiding the real infrastructure, is a common technique which was observed before by cyber criminals, like scam schemes and so on. So here, for example, we see also a fake, what is it, Le Monde website, but it's not disinformation. It's just in this fake article is just somewhere placed a link to an investment scheme. Like maybe on X you see nowadays all these ads for like crypto, crypto investment things like that. It's mainly it's the same, and they also do ads on Meta. So it's very similar to what Doppelgänger does. So they were inspired by them. Here's also by Curium made a overview where you also see that you have these different stages in the middle, from the ad to a stage which arbitrates traffic, which are meant that only those who are target are landing on the final page, and then the clone. And yeah, so we looked at the whole chain and who is providing the services, and in the middle of the whole thing, we identified a quite young Russian company which is called AISA, and around AISA there is a whole network of companies, also in the UK and London. They're all at the same post address in London, registered, just for them to easier operate in the EU. And so this is a network which we hardly could. I mean, they don't really care about Russian disinformation because they are a platform and they are earning money from it. So it was important to identify them, to know AISA, they're bad guys, but we couldn't do many on that. But we went further and identified what was interesting for us, the Western companies from the European Union, and we identified some of them, like maybe you've heard of Hetzner. It's the German, I think, biggest web hosting service. They were like hosting the third stage of the whole redirection chain, where like was a software installed, Ketaro from Applitanio from Estonia, that made sure that a fake Spiegel article is showed only to those who are coming from Germany, for example. Hosting played a major role. It's also a big Western company, Applitanio itself, and around AISA, which I said, a set of companies, and there are other companies which are again serving them. So this is really complicated. I showed it just like that, and what happened after we confronted all of them is that they really quit their services, which was a real problem for Doppelgänger for a while. They had to regroup, to find new services, solutions, and but this was a big success. But there were still some stages or some technical aspects where we couldn't say who's behind them, and so we digged further and found a new series of companies. For our big surprise, this was in our latest article. There is also traffic arbitration software which was from Ukraine, and here's again the interesting aspect: the parallels between the Doppelgänger infrastructure and the infrastructure of criminals. That most of this, some of the services are being usually used by cyber criminals, for example, like care, and so they really try to stay anonymous, and we succeeded to identify the people behind it, and that it's from Ukraine. And when we confronted the guys, they were like surprised, and they said they are against any Russian disinformation against their country, and immediately throw out the client. So this was for us a very interesting aspect, that at some criminal activity is okay, but when it comes to propaganda against its country, it's over. Yeah. So and after one new German company which registered some domains was there as well, and so in the new round, it was an article published in the middle of November. We again had success, so that Western companies, that these companies quit their services, but we still have problem with Namecheap and Namesimlo, who have registered some domains. We have asked them, but they just either didn't respond or didn't act. So if you want to, you can write them and ask them why, because it's strange. Yeah. So to sum up what we have achieved for Doppelgänger, it was like really, I mean, they had to, because all these quitting of companies, there was how to say, one after another, so they had really just to regroup all the time, and it was for them it was not easy handling with us. Maybe that's the reason why we got DDoSed in November very hard. But and some services they could replace, some of them not, and that was the reason that the whole campaign over several weeks just didn't work. I mean, they continued to to post through their bot networks content on X and posting links, but these links just led to nowhere, which was for us very interesting to observe, because it continued, and they just didn't seem to care that it doesn't work, which we just could explain that these Russian companies who are running the whole company, they're also just getting money from the presidential administration or somewhere, and they're just like on the front line, they're just reporting false statistics just to get money, and we thought that it's the same here. And and what did the investigation mean for us in Germany and in all the targeted countries is that on the one hand, Doppelgänger is now, I mean, they found in the last days they found a new way. The links work now again, so we have to think about how to handle with that. But in the whole picture, the effect of the campaign was contained mostly, and it was really interesting to see that most of these companies which I showed, they're really willing to cooperate, and just most of them really immediately just shut down their services for Doppelgänger. It was just that Doppelgänger, as criminals do, they act with fake identities, stolen credit cards and stuff like that. And for the company, it's really hard. It's huge companies, and Doppelgänger is just a small client, so it was really hard for them to find this client, to understand who this is. And if they learned about it, they just immediately quit it. This was a learning for us. And so there is a way to contain such a campaign, to do harm to such campaigns very concretely, but someone has to do it. So for us it was very interesting to see that the authorities, I mean in the Germany we have the Bundesamt für Verfassungsschutz, for example, who has also the duty to like inform also companies or people that they are in danger or what they are doing, but this didn't happen. So it was possible that the whole Doppelgänger campaign is active until now, despite its sanctions. But if you do something, you can have an effect. Yeah. So these are the main publications. You can read it. They are all in English as well on our website. And yeah, thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. Before I invite the public to ask questions, my question to you is, because Alex, I had a feeling that European companies were more willing to act for some reason than companies outside of Europe, or was it the right impression I got or not? And if it was, what is your explanation? And I'm wondering if it's connected somehow to being within the European Union, to European legislation, or was it just something human? And then to both of you, that question would lead to, what do you think could be the government's role in fighting disinformation? Because of course, EU's impulse is always like to have more laws, but then we see that these laws are not really working a lot of times because governments are too slow. On the other hand, governments can turn out to Elon Musk government and then they fight the wrong player. So that will be a second question. What do you think and what do you see in collaboration with governments? And was it the true? But
yeah, I would say the more professional a company was, the better they reacted. Like Hetzner and Hosting and all that companies, they are serious companies, they're big companies, and they just really don't want this content. On the other hand, AESA, the Russian company, or Shinjiru, which is from Malaysia, I mean, they just really don't care. The sanction doesn't affect them, they're hosting criminal things on their servers, so they just don't care. The other question is why Namesilo and Namecheap don't react. At the end, it's really, I mean, we asked lawyers and experts about, is this, the existing sanctions, do they affect, or to which, if you look at the chain, who's serving who, and it's a whole chain, who does it, does sanction affect also the lowest part of the chain? And then for us, the answer was clear that yes, it does. But at the end, I mean, you have to think there is a service like Cloudflare, which is very popular for just hiding the IT infrastructure behind this Western companies. And there are also several Doppelgänger websites behind Cloudflare. So the question is Cloudflare violating sanctions? I don't know. There's not an answer which I can give. Yeah.
On to the second question. Well, I actually am quite positive about working with governments, and actually in both the legal sense and also in just in general cooperation between civil society and government, because I mean, I think, as I said earlier, social media platforms have been a big problem and a big reason why disinformation has been so powerful and was able to spread so much. And I've actually, you know, in the very beginning, 10 years ago, we were still trying to work with social media companies. When we were optimistic, we were talking to them, we were trying to find ways forward, we were trying to provide recommendations as civil society, do things together, and that worked for a bit, that worked for some time. My colleagues from Amnesty Tech worked with them and so on. We did a big campaign with Twitter around toxic Twitter, which was basically we provided recommendations for what they should do to make sure that women are more protected from hate and abuse and violence on the platform, and that was, you know, essentially possible at that point. Then we went on to campaigning against them as civil society and running campaigns essentially to make sure that, for example, Google didn't open a version of itself in China that had completely different set of rules. And then now we're at a stage, and again, the colleague from the previous panel also showed the Digital Services Act. We're now at a stage where we need to work against social media companies together with governments. And I still have quite a bit of faith in the legal domain and in the Digital Services Act and being able to, at least in Europe, stop some of this illegal activity that is happening from Russia and beyond. So I think, but also governments, and I think a lot of governments have realized this, is that they need to just be much stronger, faster, and more agile in their own communication. Because, as I said before, we play by the rules, and that includes civil society and governments. They don't. But essentially, governments have to also acknowledge the importance of social media and communications on social media, which I think they're moving closer and closer to. And in Ukraine, we have as well been quite successful in doing that, whether that's different parts of the society.
Yeah, I mean, I think now also Germany saw the success of AfD thanks to TikTok. Also Romania saw a surprise candidate thanks to TikTok. So yeah, we are moving towards that. Indeed, I wanted to ask one small thing, because you gave us this overview of different social media, and you said more than once that this is a process which is constantly moving. And when Twitter became X, and it was super toxic, a lot of people tried to look for alternative. There was an alternative Mastodon, which didn't fly. Then there was Blue Sky, which kind of flied a bit better, but not really. And now I saw some movement again after the election toward Blue Sky, but somehow, I don't know, do you think Blue Sky has a chance, or what is it? What makes social media fly or not?
It's a really hard and complicated question. It's a complicated question, I think, particularly for Ukrainians right now, because Twitter has actually been a really powerful tool for us in a lot of senses to get the information out, for journalists to find information, to connect with people. And so it's actually quite hard to leave. One of my colleagues, Maxim, he always says that we actually don't always, as Ukrainians right now, have the privilege to leave a certain platform. As I said, imagine if we left X and all moved to Blue Sky, what would happen? X would become even worse than it is now. It would have absolutely zero sane voices on the platform. And so for me, it's what makes other social media platforms successful. It's really hard, because even really successful social media companies have basically struggled with making their new products that were there to compete with Twitter successful, like Threads, Instagram's Threads. At first there was like millions of people, fastest, I think, registered app in a very long time. But that also, the novelty wore off after a little bit. So it's hard to say. I personally, this is really bad, but I'm not on Blue Sky yet. I hear that it's nicer, but the one thing is obviously that it might also reinforce a little bit of our echo chamber situation, because a lot of people like us, I guess, moved there, but a lot of people whose hearts and minds we actually need to win to be able to shift something are still on the other platforms.
Thank you. But Correctiv, are you embracing different platforms? Do you see something which, do you see some of them as making more sense for you, or?
I don't know if I have the whole overview. Correctiv is really great, really big as media publishing house, and we have different we use different networks for different purposes. What I can say is that Correctiv left X, I think, a year ago already. And this was a strategic decision. Correctiv as company, but of course some journalists stayed there. But now I observe as well that at least my colleagues are all moving to Blue Sky.
Okay, good to know. Does somebody in the public want to ask a question or two? You're very welcome to do so. I wonder who will give you a microphone. Okay, so there is a line there. Now there's a first person, you can follow him.
Hello. My name is Michael Statnik. I'm a freelance filmmaker. I have several questions. Can I ask several questions?
Well, if they're super short.
One question for you, Valeriia. How come people are so stupid that simple rumors, you mentioned the riots in UK, it was simply posted by some person connected with Russia, a race car account, former race car. They simply state something and becomes truth. It's still baffling to me, because I remembered this other situation when somebody claimed that the prime minister of Finland was taking cocaine, and suddenly it became actual news. And I think she had to take a drug test, or she refused. I don't remember, but sort of it was a random thing stated online, being pushed, and then suddenly it becomes truth. Are these people really that stupid? That's the first question.
I'm going to think how to respond to this. People are not stupid in these cases because it's actually a targeted, strategic way to elevate these seemingly stupid, tiny posts of random channels. Russia's really good at that. And I think, for example, even, what Alexej was talking about, like fake websites, fake things, or TikTok channels that are, entertainment channels that all of a sudden start posting disinformation. Or I think on Twitter, there was this account called Megatron that was posting as Megatron from Transformers, I think, right? Yes. And all of a sudden, like 3 years after it started posting disinformation about Ukraine. And everyone was like, what is going on? So it's about understanding the way that Russian propaganda works. And I'm sure there will be other speakers as well who will tell you specifically about the tools. But one of the strongest, most powerful tools that Russia has is a network of unreliable spreaders of these tiny, insignificant seemingly things that then get blown up, like you saw on TweetDeck that I showed, like, some random account that no one has ever heard about all of a sudden gets 45,000 retweets, and you're like, how did this happen? And it's because Russian propaganda has tried and tested this network approach to spreading disinformation.
And you also showed a tweet by Edward Snowden. Do you know if he's still himself running the account? I have the pleasure of being blocked by Edward Snowden on Twitter. Ooh. Yeah, because I asked him something, but because he was basically spreading. So do you know anything about that?
I do not, so
okay.
I can't.
Another question for you, Alexej. Thank you very much for hampering Aktion Doppelgänger. I wanted to ask, do you have like a survey? Do you know how actually how successful it was in its tiny baby steps, and can you like compare it to these other media that are run by Russia? For example, there's this YouTube channel Infrarot, which is run by former Russia Today employees in Germany, the Ivan Rodionov guy and stuff like that. And there's also like this website called Anti-Spiegel, which is not a doppelganger, but it's run by a former Russia Today author. So can you like compare these like alternative media versus this fake media? Do you have like an idea which one is more influential and stuff? I know it's a complicated question, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's complicated because at Doppelgänger we don't have like reliable numbers, but there was an interesting publication by the Bavarian Verfassungsschutz, Interior Secret Service, and what they did is because Hetzner is a Bavarian company, they were able to access to the Doppelgänger servers where this software was installed, and they for months or weeks they could show into that software and just draw all the numbers from there. And they, in their report, they published that Doppelgänger through this server, the websites reached like 800,000 clicks in 8 months, which is, I don't know. At the one hand, it's a huge number. At the other hand, it's 8 months. If you look at in the presentation before, one TikTok video 4 million views. It's just another how to say? It doesn't seem so much. But yeah, the question always is like how to measure the impact. I mean, it's just a number, but how it's had been amplified by other websites and stuff like that. It's I don't know. I'm not an expert in telling you that. That's why I was telling that it's there is a discussion going on if it's even necessary for us, like investigative journalists or fact checkers, just to give so much attention to this one campaign, and maybe we should just look maybe for at the Matryoshka campaign, which is mainly producing videos, which is much more like getting much more views and maybe has more impact. So maybe our next
Can I just
investigation
ask
will.
one last question.
We have 7 minutes left and
Okay, just
a
one
lot
quick-
of people behind
just
you.
one
So it
question.
should be very short, should not be comment. It should be a very short question.
Do we have to? Can we do this stuff to the Russian information to Russia? Can we do this stuff they are doing to us? Or the question is, do we have to reach the Russians, or actually are they getting all the information they need about the war, like war crimes? Was it clear? I don't know.
Yes.
Okay.
It's not our responsibility. Might be the responsibility of some people, but I think we should focus on the rest of the world.
Right. Because, you know, they have internet as well.
Hello, my name is Hanna Listo. I'm a video journalist. Alexej, I have a question to you. Sorry, I was too far. My question is how an individual can help you to fight doppelgangers. Is there a platform where I, as individual, can go and submit a claim and say, hey, I saw a doppelganger, can you deal with them? Or maybe you know other platforms other than Corrective.
Yeah, I mean, the question is, what do you mean by? I mean, you can of course, you can. If you see a content, you can, for example, at Corrective, you can send it to us, and we do fact checking, and there's an article published. Or you mean by really disrupting the whole campaign? There, to be honest, I don't know who could. I don't know any such platform.
Okay. Does anybody know a platform to do that?
No, but you could just install an email address and just receive hints.
Yeah, I mean, what everyone can do is there are some accounts like Anti-Bot for Navalny, which is a volunteer group who are helping us in this investigation as well, and they're really closely monitoring all these activities, and so, or Curium, and if you read them, you just all the companies mentioned, you can just write them and ask why are you doing that, and just hope that they do something.
Thank you.
In Ukraine, we usually have hotlines for special services, and I think it should be like some kind of center for strategic communications, something like that.
Yeah, this will happen when Germany embraces the internet. I think we will also have a governmental agency for that. Shortly formulated questions.
Okay. Yes. Oh, okay, it works. Tatlevka Milchak. So a bit of a negative slant. Is it the fight against windmills? Why? I'm not sure. Are you aware of the 2022 conference that was in Paris? The IHDN, Les Armes de la Désinformation, the weapons of disinformation. It's on YouTube for those who speak French, but there's a huge asymmetry. If you have false information, it's very hard to counter it, and this was laid out in the conference. So coming at it from the outside, you're sort of in a losing position already. And this is where you have the platforms that become independent, and we also know how the platforms work. It's engagement. Engagement means people interact. What makes people interact? Anything that is, let me say, inverted commas, controversial, you don't care about the veracity, you want people to interact. So it's sort of a fight against windmills, and isn't it a losing battle, unfortunately, unless the platforms participate?
So your suggestion would be?
I think, if we look back at the older days of the internet, we had forums on specific topics. Forums worked because there were smaller communities, there were smaller groups, and the good forums had strong moderation. You have a small group of people who are interested in the topic, you have moderators, and if somebody really steps out of line, well, they get banned or blocked. And one of the problems we have with these international platforms is we can't moderate because there are too many people. We have the mix of languages. Ask an Englishman or an American to moderate something in German, and in French, and in Polish, and Ukrainian, it'll fail. So globalization effectively is part of the problem because managing a large platform is more difficult than managing a small platform.
I say this always in response to similar questions, which is that unfortunately social media companies they're companies, they're for-profit platforms, and sometimes we would like them to behave as a social for good tool, which is how they actually made money and actually started in the first place. You know, Twitter was like, we are the place for social movements and news. Come to us. We're so great. Same as Facebook, connecting people, talking to people. We're like making this world a better place. But in the end of the day, they're driven by profit. We need to understand that. Is it a losing battle? It's not a losing battle because it's the reality we're in right now. If we stop doing anything, then, you know, they win. They win and the disinformation authoritarians win. So I think that, I hope that Alexej and I today have also presented to you some of the things that we can do and keep doing, even if it's hard, even if it's, you know, even if it's specific campaigns, as you said, you focus on this campaign or another. There's so many things that people can do. So I don't think it's a losing battle. I think also what you said, we are also on the back foot in all of this because we embraced, as civil society, as governments, the internet and the possibilities of social media much later than everybody else. I remember when I started off, it was interns who were hired to do social media, when in Russia there were probably already, you know, ministers in the propaganda ministry looking into how social media works and what it does. So we need to really hurry up with embracing and trying to deal with what's happening right now, and not stop doing it. So.
Ivan Kuritsyn, William Davy, Hamburg, Germany. The time is limited, and so when you have a choice what to do in your social network account to promote the fundraising campaign for drone for Ukrainian soldiers or tactical medicine or that stuff, or to spend your time in social networks, for example, to explain to the people who think that both or to the people who are located under the pro-Russian narratives, and you will waste the time to explain them that Putin is a bit worse than they thought, that stuff. So in case when your time is limited, it is obvious what will you choose, and the question is it in the long perspective, does it make sense to communicate with people who, for example, will never support Ukraine as fundraisers and just will maybe in 1% shift their opinion about what Russia does?
Sorry, very short answer to that. Yes, we need to communicate with them because they then go and vote for Donald Trump if we don't.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Valeriia. I have a very short question to Valeriia. So you mentioned this very useful tip of shifting the narrative using positive terms like solution instead of problem and so on. Could you give maybe a couple of other tips to communicators who are fighting to push those truthful narratives?
I'm trying to remember. There's a quote that I really like. Maybe Marina can help me. But I think it's anger mobilizes, hope organizes. So when you're communicating, keep that in mind. Yes, there's a lot of anger, and it's okay for us to be communicating the things that make us angry to the world, but we also need to give people solutions. And for me, hope, by the way, is not like, you know, unicorns and butterflies and tomorrow's going to be better and there's going to be sunshine. Hope is just the knowledge that we can change something. It's like the belief that we're not hopeless, right? Like so for me, it's a lot of the time, it's always making sure that people feel like they can do something about a certain situation. So as communicators, we sometimes forget to do that because we're also human beings. We're also angry. We're also sad, upset. We're also affected, especially as Ukrainians communicating about Ukraine, we're deeply affected about the things that we talk about. So I think for us, it's really important to just always keep in mind that we do need to communicate solutions. We do need to be able to give people a way to participate in making the change we're talking about happen.
Thank you. I mean,
Thank you.
We are out of time. If it's
Super sure to Alexej is my question. My name is Natalia. About scaling combating disinformation. German Federal Ministry for Interior is actually responsible for combining disinformation. And I wanted to ask you if you are working together with them somehow. Do you have cooperation? And actually also my question, how to scale and how to do this cooperation between state actors and civil society actors more effective?
That's a good question. I mean, of course, we talked to also the ministry, and I got the feeling that what we did, I specifically asked, like, are you looking at the technical side? And I hadn't the feeling that this is taken seriously as a way to fight this. So I got the feeling that they are willing to fight disinformation, but in another way. And yeah, and what was interesting that this report from Curio, which was very technically, it was shared. We know that it was shared with not only German authorities, also French, I guess. A few, even before, for months, they knew about all the actors, and they just didn't act. So this ensured us there is no willing, it seems, to take like this tool of sanctions to stop it. But yeah.
Well, I was hoping for a more optimistic note in the end of this discussion, but we are still here. We are here in this conference to keep on networking, keep on talking to each other. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Val. Thank you, Alexej. Thank you, Vitsche.